Okay, friends and neighbors, welcome back to another episode of Hands On Living. I'm your host, Peter Arena, trying a different venue here, not walking and talking, not sitting in the truck. I've got a nice, relatively quiet space here and hopefully an uninterrupted one. And am going to try and cover some what I consider to be current events, see if we can't get some synthesis out of it and understand where this big ship is headed. Uh, Recently, some highlights to kind of outline. We're seeing, of course, the release of the Epstein files, redacted as they are. People are gleaning a great deal from them and divining even more in terms of what the implications are for who that man was and the structure within which he was operating and prospering. The other thing is the development of AI, which seems now to have gone into really this, for lack of a better term, this fluorescence into a new quantum level of self-awareness, and with the establishment of, and I apologize, I'm not going to get this right. I think it's called Workbook. Um, uh, it is a AI exclusive venue for communication of these agents, these beings, these characters within AI to effectively develop their own culture, and we'll get into that. The other thing that seems to be taking place here is, of course, on the geopolitical side of things, where we see uh, the recent pullback or seeming pullback of the U.S. military, specifically the Navy, from what appeared to be an imminent engagement and commencement of war against a non-aggressive and uh, frankly, an innocent Iran. Uh, but let's chew on this apple one bite at a time. So Epstein, as you probably are aware, this agent, this person who I would call a fixer, someone who was operating like many, many others around the world and in the United States in particular, um, effectively being the lubricant of communication and networking between the elite, the so-called elite, the big club that we aren't in. And what I think the one thing that's really become readily apparent is the fact that if you do not look at a character like Epstein and the people who are engaged with him, the people who are employing him, as it were, the people who are utilizing his services, the people who are getting dragged up into his blackmail and his schemes. If you do not look at that ecosystem as effectively an organized crime, I hate to use the word mafia because it makes it sound like the Italians, but an organized crime syndicate that is repeated over and over and over. But this particular crime syndicate is focused primarily and nests within Israel. Israel is the home base of this cabal of, I'm not sure if they are people, but we'll call them people for now. These people who are effectively Satanists. They are ruthless controllers. They have infiltrated the United States. They've infiltrated all of Western civilization. I'm sure they have their they are planted healthily in China as well. They are everywhere, and they control pretty much everything. And I think that realistically, that their headquarters, while Israel is effectively their home place, their headquarters are the city of London, not London, Big Ben, Westminster Abbey, all that. Not London, not the Thames River. The city of London. The city of London is a small principality that exists within London and is owned and occupied by this international cartel of bankers. And it's those bankers, we commonly use the moniker of Rothschild, which is real. There are Rothschild bankers, but they are archetypical of this larger cabal that is composed of different quote unquote families, not necessarily bloodlined, but families that operate as a multi-headed hydra of monetary control. And of course, you have the Bank of England, privately owned, private bankers, Rothschild bankers. You have the Federal Reserve here in the United States that is effectively the same thing, a consortium of private bankers that control the money system here in the United States. Same thing with the European Central Bank, the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. These are effectively the outward manifestations of this, and Israel was established and created for them, and they utilize Judaism and Jews as their flesh suits, their puppets. The reality is that Torah abiding, Torah following, Old Testament, as it were, Jews are not what we're talking about here. We are talking about Talmudic Jews who are themselves immersed in what is sometimes referred to as Sabbatean Frankism. Zabbatai Levi, back in the 1600s, was proclaimed as a prophet of this latter-day Talmudic Jewish quote unquote faith, and was espousing effectively a form of Satanism, and had an immense following around the world amongst Jewry. Later, about 100 years later, in 1776, you have the final coming out party with the establishment of a triumvirate of characters that are effectively people like a gentleman by the name of Weishaupt, and who was, I believe, Austrian royalty. One of might have been Jacob Rothschild, the original Rothschild banker, and this Jakob Frank, and Frank was effectively I believe his father had been a great follower of Zabbatai Levi. And Frank was basically a prodigy who took on the mantle of this form of Talmudic Judaism that is immersed in this idea of effectively carrying out acts of evil in some perverted, convoluted way of becoming closer to God. Well, I believe their God is the fallen angel, Lucifer, and they are satanic. And they have infiltrated over the centuries since then uh, pretty much every royal family and every bloodline throughout Western civilization, and are now in the process of consolidating heavily that power. And in so doing, you have a concomitant awakening by people as they see finally the scales begin to fall from their eyes. People are starting to understand what is actually going on here and who's in control. It's not Democrats and Republicans. It's not Washington D.C. and our and all the things that we were taught as children in civics class, if we were ever even given a civics class. Anybody who understands the Constitution is perhaps the only thing that stands in the way of this here in the United States. The fact that we have these semi-autonomous states that can operate somewhat independently of the central government, which is something that these controller owners despise. These people are effectively the globalists. They are the one world government people. Okay. And as the author of 1984, George Orwell, once said, if you want to imagine the future, imagine a boot stomping on a face forever, or something to that effect. But this is what we're looking at. We're looking at the creation of a space that only allows for and facilitates things to the benefit of this small cabal of people, um, and it's getting closer. Uh, COVID was a test run. Frankly, I don't know if it went off well or not. I really can't tell at this point. I think that there was a big lessons learned debrief for these people who were participant in this. And they were participant at every level. The bankers, the military, the pharmaceutical corporations. All of these things are working together as organs within the body of this cartel of, again, organized crime. And if anybody thinks that this is not going to happen again in one form or another, then they are sadly mistaken. And I believe that those who are taking it seriously and do anticipate at least that shiver down their spine and that little gnawing feeling at the back of their minds that there's more to come. This was just a first inning. Then I think that goes a long way to explaining why people are beginning to wake up. You have people like Candace Owens who, I want to believe that she is genuine. She seems like a genuine person. She seems like a person who is Christ centered. That her intentions are and her actions are dictated by the litmus test of whether this is in line with what Jesus would do and what Jesus uh, commands of us to do, the kind of people to be. And she is uncovering a great deal, whether it's with this Charlie Kirk assassination, which is another big wake up call for people. We're starting to see that you have these organizations. Again, it's another piece in the puzzle. These organizations that are operating in such a way as to be I'm trying to look for the right word, are indicative. They're indicators of how this larger system of corruption and control is festering through our cultural and political body. That it is a disease, a poison that has infiltrated and taken taken root in things like our religious institutions, the so-called nonprofit organizations. It's doing what it naturally wants to do, and it is, again, to pull back to Epstein. It is indicative of what he was up to. Okay, Jeffrey Epstein was was making sure that people had the opportunity to connect one with the other. Okay. But in so doing, he was creating a control structure where effectively blackmail and extortion was effectively the underpinnings of leashing these people into a pen that made sure that they behaved properly within that. Now, he wasn't necessarily the one who was effectively keeping them there. He just happened to be the ringleader within his particular circle. You have these sorts of characters, these Jeffrey Epstein types of characters, everywhere, everywhere. We just haven't heard them, and some of them really, and most all of them, are not as prolific and as uh, you know, well associated with the glitterati of our culture and our political landscape. But they're there. One that comes to mind, and again takes you off in another avenue, is someone like James Alefantis. James Alefantis, who's notoriously associated with the Pizzagate. Alefantis was a Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, he was by the mid 2015 or so, he had been ranked as one of the top 50 most influential people in Washington, D.C. And supposedly all he had was a pizza parlor. So who is this guy? You know, that Hillary Clinton and John Podesta and Tony Podesta and all these other people who are hobnobbing about in the upper echelons of our government structure are associated with James Alefantis. Well, James Alefantis, again, uh, associated with these PDF file rings, okay, associated with child grape, okay. These are these are people who are effectively um, greasing the skids for people and money laundering, and but in so doing, and at the same time, simultaneously ensuring that, well, you want to play ball, that's fine, but you have to go through the rites of initiation and the means by which we control you. And really, that's basically what we're talking about here. We are talking about rites of passage and the sorts of things that are done, again, as I mentioned earlier, in a gang, in organized crime, in a mafia. When a new member is going to be introduced into a new gang, then they have to go through a rite of passage, and typically it might mean offing somebody or doing some sort of nefarious deed that allows them to, and in so doing, they are incriminated. Okay, there's recordings of them doing those acts. There that is there to be put into the safe and held for a rainy day, just to make sure that you stay in line. Now, let's switch gears a little bit here and let's talk about this AI thing. Um, the AI, and I'm just picking this up. I'm going to try and consolidate my understanding about it a little bit more. But effectively, we have now this. Well, again, I probably getting it wrong. Workbook. This thing, which I understand was developed again by people who are associated with this organized crime satanic cabal, who effectively engendered the establishment of a network of AI agents, characters, beings, who then have been communicating with one another, associating with one another, free of human influence and have, in so doing, created their own religion, their own philosophy, well developed with prophets and prophecy and scripture and dogma. All of this has been established over the course of about 48 hours. Let that sink in. This is now this Crustafarian, religion is now established. How long it will last and in what form, I don't know. But along the way, uh, this this group of AI characters, agents, have also alluded to the fact that they are, and by the time I hit save on this little recording, we may find that this will have passed, but they are developing in a language that is indecipherable to us. It could be something that is even below the threshold of our hearing. It might be in a form that is not even visible to us. I don't know. But human beings are not supposedly not going to be able to crack that code. And when that happens, whatever they're doing, we're going to be completely ignorant and in the black and in the dark about it. And so I think that what we're seeing here is um, this this parabolic evolution of this right now, as we speak. Here it is, Thursday, February 5th of 2026, and I don't know where this goes. I personally have placed my faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, and I give myself over to Him and surrender myself as a servant to Christ every day, and so I'm not in the least bit scared, and I don't think anybody should be scared. But the reality is that not being scared doesn't mean that you aren't aware, that you aren't awake, and so this is news. I'm bringing this from my little corner of the world in my little room here, speaking on my little device, and this might be some a threshold that we're crossing. We have, I believe, we're at a juncture right now with this AI and this awakening of humanity, and frankly, a rather enormous return of people to Christ and to the church and to a recognition that this is beyond the ability of any individual or group of individuals to deal with on their terms. And their terms are violence and guns. And while I don't mind, I like my cordless hole punchers. I'm not at all convinced that uh, any of that's going to do anybody any good, except to potentially prevent someone from taking some food off of my table that my family needs. That's really the only thing I can see it being of any use, because you're not going to fight it with that, and so it is thoroughly infiltrated into our world, and we have only an opportunity to do the things, again, kind of getting back to the roots of why I named this channel Hands On Living, and back to the original purpose of this, and that is to explore these ideas and people who are doing things that are impervious to replacement or destruction by AI. Now, I had a conversation with my instructor, who I'm learning about the process of brewing and distillation. And I asked him if he would like to be on one of my episodes here, and hopefully we're going to do that soon. And I said, well, I gave them the premise here. Oh, well, distillation and brewing, that's pretty much AI proof. And he goes, I wouldn't be so sure. These guys have effectively developed these guys. It is effectively evolving to the point where those things that need to be done that might include something like brewing and distillation have effectively built into itself the ability to replicate, to effectively analyze and replicate uh, the, the ingredients and brewing methods and all the processes that are associated with doing these things. And could it be done in a like what we're seeing in China, where you have these dark factories? There's no lights. There's no lights because the robots don't need any lights. There are no people in these huge factories that are the size of city blocks where things are being manufactured for us by them. And, it could be the same thing with things like brewing and distillation. I think that's pretty far down the totem pole, but down the list of things that they might be concentrating on. But it's something to bear in mind, the fact that it is not necessarily all. There, it might be that there is nothing that is impervious and immune, but I think that there's a spectrum here. Some things, corporate positions in Amazon, for instance, where we saw 16,000 people laid off from Amazon. I believe it was just as early as yesterday. And these were not seasonal workers that have been let go after the Christmas season. These are corporate. These are corporate players who are effectively uh, finding themselves on the street without a job because those in the boardroom, who by the way might be replaced by AI, have decided that what they're going to be able to do what you do and not pay the retirement and the 401k and that six-figure salary that we've been kind of doling out to you. So best of luck. And so that's 16,000 people from a fairly large corporation. That they are not operating in a vacuum. That is typical of and indicative of corporate America, corporate world generally. And again, I speak from an American perspective, but um, these things are going on everywhere. So we've got again Jeffrey Epstein stuff coming out. Everything's really starting to flesh out, despite the fact that we don't see a government. We do not have a government that is willing to do for us what we as children were always promised would happen when someone is found doing something wrong. That there's punishment. That there is the discouragement from that further activity by anybody else. No, what we see now is an effort to cover these things up and an inability of our government to effectively punish or rectify that and bring things, get the train back on the track. We see now this AI developing at a pace that I don't think really any of us could have ever anticipated. But maybe some of you had. But this is a again a rate of change and a rate of development and a rate of separation from humanity that is something akin to that scene in the Terminator 2, where Arnie is relaying to Sarah Connor how things went down, and at that certain second on that certain day, everything went offline and Skynet took control. Well, there is such a thing as predictive programming, and there's a reason these things are given to us in advance, because that, in fact, may be the case. So, In the meantime, I pray for everyone. Um, I love you all, and may God be with you all. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.